Cambridge, 1913. The door to the office of Professor Godfrey Harold Hardy opened slowly and cautiously. Inside, sitting majestically behind a large desk piled high with papers, is one of England's most renowned mathematicians. It's here that he will read a letter from India that will change his life forever. But it's not just Hardy's life that this letter will affect. It will also change the world of math itself. Before we begin, please take some time to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon if you love stories like this. The letter is old and smells strongly of sand. As Hardy reads through the paper, he realizes that it was written by a very poor young man from India, who managed to make his way in the world through sheer mathematical genius alone. In fact, this young man never had any formal schooling whatsoever. Yet his knowledge of math is so far advanced that Hardy finds himself astounded. This letter contains a number of remarkable formulas and theorems, things that would make even the greatest mathematicians at Cambridge pause in their work. And Hardy knows that whoever wrote this letter has done so without ever having been to university. This is because the writer is not just any random man. His name is Srinivasa Ramanujan, and he truly is a genius. When Ramanujan was born, his mother could not afford to send him to school. So instead of going to university, he spent his early years selling newspapers on the street. However, from a very young age, he showed signs of being an incredibly smart individual. While other children were out playing, Ramanujan was solving complex math equations in his head. He was barely 8 years old when he first started working on what would become his magnum opus, his lost notebook, containing many of the mathematical theories and ideas he had come up with entirely on his own. At 14, he went to college, but did not do very well since he refused to study anything other than mathematics. When he turned 16, he dropped out of college altogether and began spending his days reading books on mathematics, attempting to better understand the theorems and ideas he had written down in his notebook. At night, he slept on the streets or wherever he could find shelter. Despite these less than ideal living conditions, Ramanujan continued to work on his math, and he eventually became so good that he was hired as a clerk in the accounts department of a rubber company. However, his new job left him with very little free time, and it took up too much of his energy, so he quit in order to focus more on his math. Unfortunately for Ramanujan, he didn't have enough money to buy food, let alone the nice clothes needed to get into a university, and this is why he spent so many years basically homeless, sending his math proofs to various universities. Most of them did not even bother to reply. And then there was Cambridge. One day in 1913, while reading through his mail, Hardy came across Ramanujan's letter. In it, the Indian mathematician outlined some of his most astounding theories and theorems, including his famous Mach theta functions. These are equations that resemble other mathematical equations, but upon further inspection turn out to be something completely different. They were beyond anything Hardy had seen before, and he was stunned by their brilliance. Hardy was always skeptical about the value of pure mathematics. He believed that it was very rarely applicable to real life and was not worth anyone's time. However, after reading Ramanujan's letter, he realized that he may have been wrong all along. What made this realization even more stunning was the fact that Ramanujan had come up with such complex theories with no formal mathematical education. To Hardy, this was nothing short of astonishing. In his autobiography, Hardy wrote, "I had never seen the least approach to anything of the kind. I might have looked through all the existing literature of mathematical analysis for years without coming across anything so original." Hardy decided to do everything he could to bring Ramanujan out of poverty and secure him a position at Cambridge. He worked tirelessly to raise funds and awareness for the Indian mathematician, and soon enough, Ramanujan was given a scholarship to come to Cambridge. Unfortunately, he did not realize this until 5 months later, when Hardy sent him another letter asking him to come to England as soon as possible. By the time Ramanujan arrived in Cambridge, he had already become something of a legend among the math department. Everyone wanted to meet the man who had taken the academic world by storm with his incredible mathematical genius. And yet, despite all the fame he had achieved, Ramanujan remained humble. He was a deeply religious man, and he saw his gift for mathematics as a blessing from God. Hardy, on the other hand, was an atheist and did not believe in a higher power. For him, Ramanujan's beliefs were simply a curiosity. When Ramanujan first met Hardy, there was a clear clash between the two men. They were completely different from each other. Hardy was tall and lanky, with long white hair and a beard. He dressed in expensive suits and drove around in a motor car. Ramonian, on the other hand, was short and stocky, with black hair and a mustache. He wore simple cotton clothes and had never ridden in a motorcar before. Despite their differences, though, Hardy and Ramonian quickly became friends. They enjoyed talking about mathematics, and each taught the other new things. Ramonian was eager to learn everything he could about Western mathematics, while Hardy was fascinated by the way Ramonian thought. Ramonian's genius was unlike anything Hardy had ever seen before. The Indian mathematician was able to come up with complex solutions to difficult problems by using intuition and imagination rather than logic and deduction. This was a completely different way of doing mathematics, and Hardy found it both challenging and exciting. Hardy was one of the most respected mathematicians in the world, but he was also one of the most arrogant. He believed that British mathematicians were superior to those from other countries, and he was initially skeptical of Ramonian's abilities. However, once he saw what the Indian mathematician was capable of, he had to eat his words. Ramonian's genius was not just theoretical. He was able to apply his knowledge of mathematics to solve real-world problems. For example, he developed a formula for calculating the approximate value of pi, which is still used today. He also made significant contributions to the field of number theory, which is the study of the properties of numbers. But it was not all smooth sailing for Ramonian. Despite his brilliance, the Indian mathematician struggled to fit in at Cambridge. He was an outsider in many ways, and he often felt lonely and isolated. Furthermore, he was very poor and could not afford decent housing or food. Despite these challenges, Ramonian's genius shone through, and he continued to make groundbreaking discoveries in mathematics. Sadly, Ramonian's life was cut short when he died of tuberculosis in 1920 at the age of 32. Before his death, he left behind a legacy that would inspire generations of mathematicians. He showed the world that genius can come from anywhere and that anything is possible if you set your mind to it. After Ramonian's death, Hardy continued to work at Cambridge, and he became one of the most influential mathematicians of the 20th century. He also wrote a book about his friend's life and work, which helped to popularize Ramonian's ideas. Today, Ramonian is remembered as one of the greatest mathematicians of all time. His work has had a profound impact on the field, and he continues to inspire people around the world. There are many statues and memorials dedicated to him, and his life story has been told in numerous books and documentaries. One of the most interesting aspects of Ramonian's life is the question of how he developed his mathematical abilities. He had no formal education in mathematics, and yet he was able to make groundbreaking discoveries. Some believe that Ramonian was a self-taught mathematician, while others believe that he had some kind of special ability. There is no doubt that Ramonian was a genius, but what made him a genius? Was it his environment, his upbringing, or something else entirely? This question has been debated by experts for years, and there is still no definitive answer. Another interesting aspect of Ramonian's life is the relationship he had with G.H. Hardy. The two men were very different from each other, but they shared a love of mathematics. Their friendship was an unlikely one, but it was also one of the most important relationships of their lives. Hardy was Ramonian's mentor and guide, and he helped the Indian mathematician to succeed in a field that was largely dominated by European men. Ramonian, on the other hand, was Hardy's inspiration. He showed the English mathematician what could be done when you set your mind to it. There are many lessons that can be learned from Ramonian's life. He was a man who beat the odds and achieved greatness despite coming from humble beginnings. He was a genius who changed the world of mathematics forever, and he was a man who lived a life full of passion and dedication. If you want to learn more about Srinivasa Ramonian, we highly encourage you to read a biography. You will be amazed by the story of this extraordinary man and his contributions to mathematics. How do you think Ramonian's life changed Hardy's life? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon for more amazing stories.